I came home early that evening, exhausted from a long day at work. The house was quiet, but I could hear a voice drifting down from the second floor. Rebecca's voice. I paused in the entryway, setting my briefcase down carefully so she wouldn't hear me. Something about her tone made my skin prickle. It wasn't the usual casual chatter I heard when she was on the phone with friends. No, this was different, lower, intimate. I took a step closer, straining to hear. "Last night was incredible," she said, a soft laugh in her voice. My stomach clenched. I stood frozen, listening as she went on, oblivious to my presence below. "I still feel it," she murmured, her voice dripping with something I hadn't heard in years, excitement. "I don't know how I'm going to keep my hands off you the next time we see each other." A cold wave of nausea swept over me. My hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. I didn't need to hear anything else. I turned and walked silently to the living room, my heart pounding. My mind raced with possibilities, excuses, anything that would explain away what I had just heard. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she was talking about a book, movie, some silly fantasy she shared with a friend. But deep down, I knew better. Rebecca was cheating on me. I forced myself to sit down, inhaling deeply, trying to still the fury rising in my chest. A confrontation now would only give her a chance to lie, to spin a story, to make me doubt what I had just heard with my own ears. No, I needed proof. That night, as Rebecca lay next to me in bed, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong, I made my decision. The next morning, I bought a small recording device and planted it in the house. It was easy to hide, inside a decorative vase in the living room, another in the office, anywhere she might feel safe enough to talk. And then I waited. Day by day, I collected pieces of her betrayal. Fragments of whispered conversations, giggles, the occasional breathless sigh. Every time I listened, my blood boiled hotter. I learned his name. I learned where they met. I learned how long this had been going on. And I learned just how deep her lies ran. Rebecca wasn't just cheating. She was planning something bigger. And if she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she had no idea what was coming. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Rebecca's voice, soft, breathless, filled with a desire that had been missing in our marriage for years. But it wasn't for me. It was for him. I lay there in the dark, my pulse hammering in my ears, while Rebecca slept soundly beside me. I wanted to shake her awake, to confront her right then and there, but I forced myself to wait. Confrontation wouldn't be enough. I needed her to feel what I felt. The shock, the humiliation, the slow, creeping realization that her world was about to come crashing down. Morning came, and Rebecca moved through the house as if nothing had changed. She kissed me absent-mindedly on the cheek before heading to the kitchen, humming to herself. My stomach churned. I waited until she left for work before retrieving the recording device from the living room. My hands trembled as I connected it to my laptop and pressed play. Her voice filled the room, crystal clear. "You drive me crazy," she said, laughing softly. "I hate sneaking around, but at the same time, it makes it so much more exciting." Then another voice, his voice. Low, confident. "You like the thrill, don't you?" Rebecca let out a breathy sigh. "I love it. I love how dangerous it feels. And I love how you make me feel." I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. The conversation continued, full of whispered confessions and flirtatious teasing. But then the tone shifted. Rebecca hesitated. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," she said. A pause. "Do you want to stop?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. I think Ryan is starting to notice something. I have to be careful." I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "I'll do whatever it takes to be with you," she continued. "I just need to figure out how." I shut the laptop, my hands gripping the edges of the desk. It wasn't just an affair. She was planning something, maybe an exit, maybe a way to manipulate me into letting her go easily. Either way, she was already thinking ahead, plotting her next move while I sat here, drowning in my own anger. I had to be smarter than her. I spent the next few days gathering more evidence. Every night, I listened to her calls, her messages, her little secrets whispered into the void. She was careful, but not careful enough. I learned his name, Daniel. I learned where they met, hotel just outside the city. And I learned something even more damning, something that made my blood turn to ice. They weren't just sneaking around for fun. Rebecca had opened a separate bank account, and she was transferring money. A lot of money. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she preparing to leave me? Was she funneling money to him? Was she trying to set me up for something? I needed answers. That night, as Rebecca slept peacefully beside me, I turned to look at her. For 15 years, I had loved this woman, built a life with her, given her everything. And now, I was nothing more than an obstacle in her way. A slow, chilling realization settled over me. She had no idea that I was already 2 steps ahead. And when the time was right, I would make sure she lost everything. I spent the next week studying Rebecca like she was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every glance, every excuse, every time she checked her phone and turned away slightly, it was all data. She was getting bolder, but I was patient. I checked our bank accounts obsessively, tracking every transaction she made. The new account she had opened wasn't tied to any of our shared finances, but I found a way in. She had used the same security question answers she always did, her childhood pet's name, our wedding date. It was almost insulting how easy it was. What I found made my stomach tighten. She had been transferring small amounts of money every few days, nothing that would raise suspicion on its own. But altogether, it added up to thousands. And then I saw the withdrawal. $5,000. Taken out in cash 3 days ago. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. This wasn't just an affair. She was planning something bigger. Was she trying to leave? Was she helping Daniel with something? I needed more. I placed another recording device in our bedroom. It was a risk. If she found it, everything would fall apart. But I needed to know what she was saying when she thought I was asleep. That night, I pretended to drift off early. I slowed my breathing, kept my body still, and waited. Around midnight, she slipped out of bed. I heard the soft creak of the floorboards as she padded across the room, then the faint rustling of her grabbing her phone. I resisted the urge to turn over and catch her in the act. She stepped into the hallway, and I let out a slow breath. In the morning, I would check the recording. What I found shattered any lingering hope I had that this was just a meaningless fling. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I have the money. A pause. Then Daniel's voice. Good. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? Rebecca let out a soft, nervous laugh. No, he's clueless. He's been a little distant lately, but that actually makes it easier. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Then Rebecca lowered her voice even further, her next words barely audible. I just want this to be over. I don't want to play this game anymore. Daniel's response was sharper. You knew what this was when we started. I know, she said quickly. I don't want to hurt him like this. I could almost hear his smirk. You should have thought about that before. She exhaled shakily. Just tell me what to do next. The recording ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, my whole body tense. She wanted it to be over. Over. What exactly was she planning? Was she talking about our marriage? Or something else entirely? For the first time, a dark thought crept into my mind. Was she trying to get rid of me? I stood slowly, every nerve in my body on edge. If Rebecca thought she was playing me, she was wrong. This wasn't just an affair. This was a game, and I was about to change the rules. I woke up the next morning with a single thought burning in my mind. I had been patient. I had collected my evidence, played the fool, let her believe she was outsmarting me. But last night's recording had changed everything. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. Rebecca wasn't just sneaking around. She was making moves, shifting money, and whispering in the dark about wanting it to be over. I couldn't ignore the possibility. I needed to find out exactly what she and Daniel were planning. Rebecca moved through the house like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, made coffee, scrolled through her phone while waiting for it to brew. My stomach turned at the sight of her. 15 years together, and I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. Busy day today, I asked casually, sipping my coffee. She barely looked up. Yeah, lots of meetings. I'll be home late. Late again. I nodded, pretending to accept it. I might work late too, I lied. Lots going on at the office. She smiled, but I saw the relief in her eyes. She thought she had more time to sneak around. She had no idea I was already setting my trap. That afternoon, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit back and wait for her to make the next move. I was going to take control. I called a friend of mine, Ethan. He worked in private security, the kind of guy who had access to resources I couldn't get on my own. We hadn't spoken in a while, but when I told him I needed help, he didn't ask questions. "Can you track someone's location?" I asked bluntly. Ethan hesitated. "Legally? No, but I might know someone who can help." I exhaled. "I just need to know where my wife is going when she's not with me." There was a pause. Then Ethan sighed. "Give me her number. I'll see what I can do." I sent it to him, my hands steady. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was survival. While I waited, I checked our home security cameras. I had installed them a few years ago for safety, but now they were serving a different purpose. I went back through the footage, looking for any sign of Daniel. And then I saw him. A week ago, late at night when I was out running errands, Rebecca had let him in through the back door. They stayed in the living room for nearly 2 hours before he left. No rushed goodbyes. No sneaking out like he was ashamed. No, Daniel wasn't just some affair sneaking in and out of hotels. He was comfortable, confident, like he belonged here. My vision blurred with rage. Ethan called me back that evening. "Got something for you." I braced myself. "Where is she?" "She's at a hotel. The Grand Elm, downtown. Checked in about 20 minutes ago." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. "She's with him, isn't she?" "Can't say for sure," Ethan said carefully. "But I'd bet on it." I didn't hesitate. "Send me the address." It was time to pay my wife a visit. The Grand Elm was sleek, expensive, the kind of place businessmen stayed when they wanted to impress someone. I parked across the street, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no plan, no strategy. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. I walked through the lobby, acting casual. The receptionist barely glanced at me. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, the same floor Ethan had tracked Rebecca to. And then I saw them. Rebecca and Daniel, standing in the hallway outside room 428. She was laughing, her hand on his arm, looking up at him the way she used to look at me. Daniel leaned in, whispering something in her ear. She smiled. Something inside me snapped. I stepped forward. "Enjoying yourselves?" Rebecca turned sharply, her eyes widening in horror. "Ryan." Daniel took a step back, his expression hardening. He didn't look surprised, just annoyed that I had interrupted them. I laughed bitterly. "Go on. Don't stop on my account." Rebecca's face went pale. "It's not what it looks like." I tilted my head. "Really? Because it looks like you're about to sleep with him." Daniel sighed. "Look, man." I cut him off with a glare. "Don't speak." He shut his mouth. Rebecca swallowed hard. I can explain." I took another step closer, lowering my voice. "Explain what, exactly? The affair? The secret bank account? Or maybe the part where you're plotting something behind my back?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should." "Shut up," I snapped, my eyes still on Rebecca. She trembled. "Ryan, please." I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper. "You thought you were smart, didn't you?" I murmured. "Thought I wouldn't find out." Tears welled in her eyes. I smiled. "You have no idea what's coming." And with that, I turned and walked away. The trap was set. Now, I was going to watch them fall right into it. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove around aimlessly, my mind replaying the scene at the hotel over and over again. Rebecca's stunned face. The way Daniel had shifted uncomfortably, like a child caught doing something wrong. The sickening realization that she hadn't even looked guilty, just scared. Scared that I had figured it out. Scared of what I might do next. And she was right to be afraid. By the time I pulled into a quiet parking lot, my rage had sharpened into something colder, more calculated. I had all the proof I needed, Rebecca's late-night whispers, the bank account, the hotel. But I still didn't know the full extent of her plan. And I wouldn't make my move until I had every last detail. So I did the one thing I knew would give me more answers. I bugged the house. Early the next morning, I arrived home before Rebecca. She must have stayed the night with Daniel, too ashamed or too comfortable to face me. That worked in my favor. I placed another recording device under the couch in the living room, another near the kitchen. This time, I wanted to hear everything. The way Rebecca talked to herself when she thought she was alone. The way she rehearsed her lies. If she called Daniel, I would catch every word. Then I waited. At 9:17 a.m., the front door opened. I stayed in the kitchen, my back to her, sipping my coffee. "Morning," she said hesitantly. I didn't answer. She sighed and walked closer. "Ryan, please, we need to talk." I turned slowly, meeting her bloodshot eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Good." I said nothing. She fidgeted. "Look, I know what last night looked like." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, do you?" Rebecca winced. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Stop. My voice was sharp, final. "Don't insult me with excuses." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry." I took a step closer, watching her flinch. "Sorry for what?" I asked softly. "For sleeping with him? For sneaking around? Or for getting caught?" She looked away. That told me everything I needed to know. "I don't want to fight," she whispered. I need time to explain." I studied her for a long moment, then forced a sigh. "Fine." Her eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to agree. "Really?" I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Take all the time you need." Relief flooded her face. She thought she had won a small victory. She had no idea that I was only buying myself more time. More time to collect information. More time to plan her downfall. That afternoon, I checked the recordings, and they gave me exactly what I needed. The moment I left for work, Rebecca made a call. To Daniel. "Ryan knows," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to do." Daniel's voice was steady calm. "You need to stick to the story. Play innocent. He'll cool down eventually." "What if he doesn't?" she asked. "What if he—" She hesitated. "What?" Daniel pressed. Rebecca exhaled shakily. "What if he finds out everything?" Silence. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low. "Then we make sure he doesn't." My breath hitched. Rebecca swallowed. "I don't think I can do this." "Yes, you can," Daniel said smoothly. "We've come too far to back out now." Another pause. Then Rebecca whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "I don't want to hurt him." I sat back, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Hurt me? This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was something else. Something dangerous. I clenched my jaw, my hands curling into fists. Rebecca had no idea that she was being recorded. No idea that I now had proof, real proof, that whatever she and Daniel were planning wasn't just about sneaking around. It was something worse. Much worse. I took a slow, deep breath. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them. And when I was done, Rebecca would have nothing left. For the next few days, I pretended. I pretended to believe Rebecca's forced apologies, her nervous smiles, the way she started acting overly attentive, cooking my favorite meals, rubbing my shoulders, trying to ease the tension. She thought she was regaining control. She thought I was falling for it. I let her think that. But every time she touched me, every time she smiled, I heard her whispering to Daniel, "What if he finds out everything? Then we make sure he doesn't." They weren't just having an affair. They were planning something that involved hurting me. The only question was, how far were they willing to go? I needed answers, and I knew exactly how to get them. That Friday night, I made my move. Rebecca thought I was working late. I even sent her a text. "Stuck at the office. Don't wait up." She responded within seconds. "Okay. Be safe. Love you." The words made my stomach churn. I parked a block away from the house and waited. At 9:42 p.m., the headlights of a car cut through the dark. I tensed as I watched Daniel's sleek black sedan pull into my driveway. He didn't even try to be discreet. He walked right up to the door like he owned the place. Rebecca let him in. I clenched the steering wheel. It wasn't enough that they met in secret. Now they were doing it in my house. I waited 5 minutes, then slipped around the back, entering through the side door. My footsteps were silent as I moved through the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. Their voices drifted from the living room. Don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Rebecca was saying. Daniel's tone was smooth, reassuring. Just a little longer. Ryan's been acting different, she whispered. I think he suspects something. My hands curled into fists. Daniel chuckled. He's clueless. He's always been clueless. I exhaled slowly through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. Then Rebecca's voice dropped lower. What if he finds out about the money? Silence. Daniel shifted. He won't. But if he does, she pressed. Another pause. Then Daniel spoke, his voice cold. Then we do what we talked about. My blood turned to ice. Rebecca inhaled sharply. I don't know, Daniel. That seems. It's the only way, Daniel said smoothly. If you want to be free of him, this is how we do it. A deep, uneasy silence filled the room. I took a step forward, making the floor creak. Rebecca gasped. Did you hear that? Daniel stood. Relax. It's probably the house settling. I stepped into the doorway. Or maybe it's the husband you were just talking about. Rebecca whirled around, her face draining of color. Ryan. Daniel's expression hardened, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. I smiled, slow and sharp. Don't stop on my account. I'd love to hear more about what you were planning. Rebecca stammered. It's not what you think. Save it, I snapped. I've heard enough. Daniel stepped forward slightly, his posture tense. You should leave, Ryan. This isn't your business. I laughed, low and bitter. Not my business. I gestured around. You're standing in my house, plotting against me, and you think this isn't my business? Rebecca reached for me, her hands trembling. Please, just let me explain. I took a step back, my eyes burning into hers. No, it's my turn to talk. She froze. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play. Their own voices filled the room. Then we do what we talked about. It's the only way. Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth. Daniel paled. I let the recording play until the very last word. Then I spoke, my voice eerily calm. You were going to do what exactly? Rebecca shook her head wildly. Right, it's not. Don't lie to me, I cut in sharply. Not anymore. Daniel's jaw tightened. So what now, he asked, his voice low. I tilted my head, studying him. That depends. How do you think this ends? Neither of them spoke. I smiled coldly. I'll tell you how. I turned to Rebecca first. You wanted to be free of me? Congratulations. You are. Her face crumpled. Ryan, please. I filed for divorce this morning, I said smoothly, watching her flinch. And I sent my lawyer all the evidence I have. The affair, the money, and now this. I gestured to my phone. Your little plan. Rebecca swayed on her feet. You're lying. I smirked. Am I? I turned to Daniel next. And you're going to walk out of this house, get in your car, and drive far away. Because if you ever come near me again, I will personally make sure every part of your life falls apart. His lips pressed into a thin line. You don't have that kind of power. I laughed softly. You'd be surprised. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. The difference between you and me, Daniel, is that I don't make threats. I met his gaze dead on. I make promises. For the first time, he looked scared. Good. Rebecca sobbed. Ryan, please. I wasn't thinking. I turned to her one last time. You made your choice. Then I walked out. Rebecca and Daniel thought they had one. They had no idea the war had just begun. I walked out of that house and never looked back. Not because I was done with them. No, that would have been too easy. I left because I'd already set the wheels in motion. Rebecca and Daniel thought they had me cornered, that I would react emotionally, throw a fit, and let them control the narrative. They thought they could handle me. But they underestimated just how far I was willing to go. And they had no idea that their entire world was about to come crashing down. The first domino fell the very next morning. At exactly 8 a.m., Rebecca received a formal notice from my lawyer, filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. Every piece of evidence I had gathered, the recordings, the texts, the secret bank account transfers, was neatly compiled and ready to be used against her in court. Rebecca called me 6 times. I didn't pick up. At 10:15 a.m., I got a call from her boss. Ryan, Mr. Caldwell's voice was polite but firm. I received an email this morning regarding some concerning financial activity related to Rebecca. I smirked. Ah, yes. I sent that. A beat of silence. Then a cautious, would you care to elaborate? Of course, I said smoothly. I recently discovered that Rebecca has been funneling thousands of dollars into a personal account without any explanation. Given that she's in charge of finances at your company, I thought you might want to review her accounts. Just to be sure. The silence stretched. Then Caldwell exhaled sharply. I see. We'll conduct an internal audit immediately. Excellent, I said. Let me know if you need anything. By noon, Rebecca had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. At 2:30 p.m., Daniel's turn came. I sent an anonymous tip to his employer's HR department. Attached was a collection of emails between him and Rebecca, romantic exchanges that proved an ongoing affair. Normally, workplace relationships weren't grounds for termination. But Daniel worked for a high-profile law firm that handled high-value divorces. A scandal like this, with proof that he was involved in marital fraud, it was a career-ending revelation. At 3 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Daniel, you son of a... Message deleted. I laughed. At 4:45 p.m., I got another call, this time from Rebecca. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. I picked up. Yes. A deep, shuddering breath. Then a broken whisper. Why are you doing this? I leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline. I thought you wanted to be free of me, Rebecca. I'm just making sure you get what you wanted. She sniffled. You've already won. Please, just stop. I tilted my head. I don't remember this being a game. Silence. Then softer, Ryan, I don't have a job anymore. Not my problem. They're investigating me, she choked. I could be charged with fraud. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean because you stole money from our accounts and tried to hide it? Sounds like a you problem. Not a me problem. She sobbed. I didn't mean. I cut her off. You meant to betray me. You meant to sneak around. You meant to plot against me. My voice turned cold. You just didn't mean to get caught. She went quiet. I let the silence stretch before delivering my final words. This is only the beginning. Then I hung up. At 6 p.m., I got the confirmation I was waiting for. Daniel had been fired. Not put on leave. Not given a warning. Fired. Turns out, the senior partners at his firm had zero tolerance for unethical behavior. A married man committing financial fraud with his mistress? Not a good look. I could only imagine the look on his face when he got the news. Rebecca called me again at 6:30. I ignored it. At 7 o'clock, she sent a text. Rebecca, please, Ryan. Can we just talk? I'll do anything. I smiled to myself. Desperation looked good on her. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Rebecca was unraveling. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was flooded with messages from her. Some were desperate apologies. Others were furious accusations. It was almost entertaining to see how quickly she cycled between begging for forgiveness and blaming me for ruining her life. As if she hadn't ruined mine first. As if she hadn't plotted against me with Daniel. Daniel, on the other hand, had gone radio silent. No calls. No texts. Just complete silence. I figured he was scrambling to save what little remained of his career. But I wasn't done with him yet. Not even close. By noon, I received a call from Rebecca's mother. I sighed before answering. Hello, Margaret. Her voice was tight. Ryan, what are you doing to my daughter? I smirked. You'll have to be more specific. She called me crying, she snapped. Said you got her suspended from work, ruined her finances, and turned her life upside down. She's devastated. I leaned back in my chair. She devastated our marriage first. She made a mistake. I laughed. She made a series of calculated choices. And now she's facing the consequences. Margaret exhaled sharply. Ryan, I know what she did was wrong. But you're being cruel. Cruel? I clenched my jaw, gripping the phone tighter. No, I said, my voice dangerously calm. What was cruel was Rebecca sleeping with another man in my own house. What was cruel was her sneaking around, stealing money, and planning something behind my back. What was cruel was her standing beside a man who suggested they get rid of me and saying nothing. Silence. Then Margaret whispered, "Get rid of you?" I exhaled slowly. She didn't tell you that part, did she? No. Of course she didn't, I muttered. I let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. You raised a liar, Margaret. Then I hung up. By evening, Rebecca showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole, looking like a complete wreck, makeup smeared, eyes red, hair a mess. I considered leaving her out there, but I wanted to hear what she had to say. I opened the door. You look terrible. She flinched. Please, she whispered. Just, please let me in. I let her. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to watch her beg. She stepped inside hesitantly, wringing her hands. I don't know where to start. I folded my arms. Try the truth. Rebecca bit her lip, then exhaled shakily. I'm messed up. I raised an eyebrow. That's an understatement. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant for it to go this far. I tilted my head. You never meant to get caught. There's a difference. She swallowed hard. Daniel, he convinced me to open that account. He said it was a safety net in case things between us got serious. I scoffed. And you just listened to him. Her voice cracked. I was stupid. Yes, I agreed. Rebecca wiped at her tears. Ryan, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, just call off whatever you're doing. I have nothing left. I studied her, taking in the pathetic side of the woman who had once been my wife. You had nothing left the moment you chose him over me, I said coldly. She let out a soft sob. I cut her off. You weren't just unfaithful, I said, stepping closer. You plotted against me. You helped Daniel plan something that could have destroyed me. Rebecca shook her head wildly. No, I never wanted to hurt you. You did hurt me. I interrupted sharply. You didn't just cheat, Rebecca. You betrayed me. You let another man convince you to steal from me, to lie to me, to turn me into an obstacle instead of your husband. She sobbed harder. I was lost. No, I snapped. You were selfish. Silence. Then I spoke the words that shattered whatever hope she had left. You want me to stop? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. She nodded desperately. I smiled coldly. Then give me Daniel. Her breath hitched. What? I leaned in. I want everything. The texts, the emails, the conversations, the proof that he was the one who started this whole thing. Rebecca hesitated. I stared her down. You owe me that much. She swallowed hard. Then finally she nodded. I smirked. Checkmate. Rebecca didn't hesitate for long. By the next evening, I had everything. She sent me screenshots of her messages with Daniel, every text, every email, every bank transfer he had talked her into. She even forwarded a voice recording of a call they had a week ago. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. Daniel's voice was smooth, calculating. You have to be smart about this, he said. Ryan's not an idiot, but he's predictable. He won't see it coming. Rebecca hesitated. I don't know Daniel. I feel like he's catching on. Daniel let out a soft chuckle. And what's he going to do? You have the money. He has no proof. Just stick to the plan. The plan? I clenched my jaw. Rebecca's voice dropped lower. But what if he fights back? Daniel's tone darkened. Then we make him let go. I exhaled slowly. That was enough. The next morning, I sent everything to Daniel's wife. Her name was Claire. We had never been close, but I knew her well enough to know she wasn't the type to take betrayal lightly. I found her email in one of the messages Rebecca forwarded me and attached every piece of evidence I had. Then I wrote one simple message. Claire, your husband is not the man you think he is. See attached. Right. I pressed send. Then I sat back and waited for the explosion. It didn't take long. By noon, Rebecca texted me in full panic. Rebecca, what did you do? Daniel is freaking out. Claire kicked him out. He's saying he's going to ruin you. I smirked. Me, he already tried. His turn now. By 3 p.m., I got a message from an unknown number. Daniel, you think this is funny? You're making a mistake. You don't know who you're messing with. I took a sip of my coffee and typed back. Me, you're right. I didn't know. But now I do. And so does your wife. He didn't respond. At 6 p.m., Rebecca showed up at my apartment again. She looked even worse than before. Pale, shaken. Ryan, she whispered, stepping inside. Daniel's gone. I frowned. What do you mean, gone? I mean, Claire threw him out, his firm blacklisted him, and he's completely disappeared. No calls, no text, nothing. I crossed my arms. Good. Rebecca's eyes filled with panic. No, Ryan, you don't understand. He's angry. I think he's going to do something reckless. I tilted my head. You scared of him now? She swallowed hard. I should have been scared a long time ago. I studied her carefully. So, tell me, Rebecca, what was the plan? She exhaled shakily. He wanted me to take as much money as I could before filing for divorce first. He said if I control the finances, I'd have the upper hand. I raised an eyebrow, and her lip trembled. And if you resisted, he had other ideas. I went still. Like what? Rebecca shook her head wildly. I don't know. He never said it outright, but I felt it. He wanted to make sure you wouldn't be a problem. I clenched my fists. So that was it. It wasn't just about Rebecca leaving me. Daniel had been trying to force me out of the picture. And now the snake was cornered. Rebecca's voice wavered. What do we do? I smiled coldly. We wait. Because when men like Daniel lost everything, they always made one fatal mistake. They got desperate. Daniel was desperate. I could feel it. After years of getting away with his schemes, he had finally lost. His marriage, his job, his reputation, gone in a matter of days. And men like him, they don't accept defeat. They lash out. They try to take back control. And I knew exactly how he'd do it. So I prepared. For 3 days, there was silence. No messages. No calls. Rebecca was on edge, jumping at every sound. She had moved into a friend's house, too afraid to stay alone. I had no sympathy for her. She made her bed, and now she was lying in it. But I wasn't worried about Rebecca. I was waiting for Daniel's move. And then, on the 4th night, it happened. 2:14 a.m. The sound outside my apartment window. Soft. Careful. Too careful. I exhaled, already knowing who it was. I checked the security feed on my phone. There he was, Daniel, dressed in black, moving toward my back door. I let out a slow breath. Finally, he had taken the bait. What Daniel didn't know was that I had been waiting for this. That night, after Rebecca warned me about his other ideas, I took extra precautions. I installed extra cameras. I alerted the police about a possible trespasser. And most importantly, I left my back door unlocked. Because I wanted him inside. I wanted all of it on camera. And just as I expected, Daniel walked right into the trap. I sat in my dark living room, waiting. Footsteps. Slow, cautious. Then a shadow in the hallway. I watched as Daniel crept forward, his body tense, his hands clenched into fists. He thought he was in control. He thought he was the predator. He had no idea he was already caught, looking for something. I said, my voice low. Daniel froze. I flicked on a light, revealing my phone in my hand, the security feed displayed on the screen. Every movement he had made was recorded. His face twisted. You set me up. I smirked. Took you long enough to figure that out. His jaw tightened. You think you can ruin me and just walk away? I already ruined you. I stood slowly. Now, I'm just finishing the job. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the door. He was deciding whether to fight or run. He chose wrong. Because right at that moment, sirens wailed outside. Daniel's head snapped toward the window. I took a slow step forward. You were always so sure of yourself. Always so certain that you could manipulate people. That you could control everything. I tilted my head. How does it feel to be powerless? His face contorted with rage. He lunged. Bang, bang. Bang. Police. Open up. Daniel stopped mid-step. My smirk widened. Oh, did I forget to mention? The cops have been watching the whole time. His hands curled into fists. Then the door burst open. 3 officers stormed inside. Daniel had nowhere to run. Hands where we can see them, one of them barked. Daniel hesitated for half a second. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. He turned to glare at me. You think this is over? He hissed. I smiled. No, Daniel. It's just over for you. The rest was a blur. Daniel was arrested for breaking and entering. The police took my statement, reviewed the footage, and took him away. I stood at the doorway, watching as they shoved him into the back of a police car. His eyes met mine. Pure hatred. I just smiled. Then I turned and shut the door. The next morning, Rebecca called me. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. Ryan. Her voice was small. Yes, a shaky breath. Daniel's in jail. I know. Another pause. Then, is it really over? I exhaled. For me? Yes. I heard her swallow. And for me? I smiled to myself. That depends, Rebecca. On what? She whispered. On how will you start over? In the end, Daniel lost everything. Rebecca's name was cleared in court. She testified against him, exposing how he had manipulated her into the scheme. She lost her job, her home, but not her freedom. She tried to fix things. I let her try, for Emily's sake. But as for us, we were done. I moved on. And the best part, Rebecca and Daniel would spend the rest of their lives wondering how everything fell apart so fast. They thought they could outsmart me, but they forgot one simple rule. Never betray someone who's smarter than you. Game over.